Hi everyone, I'm Shauna and welcome to the channel. Today's video is a little bit more informal than what I normally produce on the channel because I just kind of want to have a conversation. I have some thoughts that I would like to share, but also solidify on a topic that I think is just really relevant and timely for the beginning of the year. So many of us are starting new projects. I think for a lot of people here in this community, they're going to be maybe consumption related projects. No buys and low buys. For me, it's the contentment project. And what I want to talk about today is kind of has that in mind. And so today's video applies outside of the no buy or low buy. I think it applies to so many new projects that we might have in our lives, like starting a business or any kind of new creative project. And so let's get into the topic that I want to talk about. One of the most important things that we need to ask ourselves if we are starting a new project is one question that I think can really change the framework of things if we ask it as we start, which is, how will I know if I succeed? And so I think this applies to goal setting. So if you're on a no buy or low buy, how do you know that you're successful? But also in other projects. When I was doing the internship, one of the questions that the woman I was working for asked is, how will we know if this is successful? For her as a manager and me as an employee, or how do we know if our relationship is successful? And so there's a lot of areas to ask ourselves, there's a lot of places in our lives, I think, where this is equivalent. And the reason why I bring this up is because for me, and I think for maybe a lot of you, the goal or the success might seem obvious. I'm on a no buy, so I am successful if I don't buy anything. Or I'm on a low buy, and therefore my success, or I am successful on this endeavor if I stick to my budget. This is important. This is certainly an aspect of success and what it means to have success in your project. But for me personally, I kind of want to ask myself to do more. And we're on our projects, or we're starting our projects for a reason. You're on a no buy or a low buy, and I'm doing my contentment project for a reason. I don't think the primary reason is I'm on this low buy because I don't want to buy these things. I don't want to buy these things, or the buying is a symptom of something else. We want to be happier, or we want to save more money, or we want to bring in less things in our lives, or we want to live more minimally, or I think there's so many things that we could have as goals for ourselves. And so one of the metrics that we use to achieve that goal is by our budgets or by our spending goals that we set for ourselves. And so for me, when I'm thinking about my project in specific, I did talk about really clear finance or really clear goals. I have them on the screen here, so I'm just taking a look. I have spend no more than $650 on makeup and skincare. That's really clear. I will either spend that amount or I won't. Or I'll go over or I won't. Spend no more than $1,400 on fashion. I say fashion, but that's lots of things. Accessories, shoes, jewelry. I want to bring in no more than 365 items in the year. The next is I want to track my project usage, and I want to do this in a lot of ways. To track my spending, and the monetary value of things I bring in, also in declutters and empties, but also in my items in list as well. These are all categories that I've kind of committed to. Inventories are another thing that comes to mind. I also want to complete 12 contentment projects by the end of the year. So I think these are great, and that these are really clear, tangible goals that I will know if I do or if I complete them or not. But none of these things speak to the fact of contentment. How will I know if I'm content, which I think is a larger goal? And that's the question that has been on my mind the most. How do I know if I'm content? And so when I'm thinking about the success of my projects, I can complete everything I just talked about, but I might not be content. And while I can't promise myself contentment, I can't promise that doing these things will lead to contentment. Completing a contentment project doesn't mean that I will experience contentment. So I think the harder metric for me is, how will I know if I'm content? Is it like love, where like, if you know, you know? Or is it something else? And I think a really good question that I want to ask myself is, what does contentment feel like? And I want to avoid the question of what does contentment mean to me, because I've kind of addressed that. I've addressed the fact that to me, contentment means using what I have and being happy with what I have, with what I own, feeling like what I own is good enough. When it comes to things like makeup, as an example, I don't want to feel the need of consistently buying more. I want to feel happy in my own skin and in my own life. I want to enjoy my life and the everyday and the mundane. And I want to experience the mundane, and I want to have enjoyment out of it. And, I could think about more specific things when it comes to makeup, as an example, like I want to use what I have first before buying new, or I want to spend less money on physical things, and I want to save more money. What I'm trying to say is that I understand what I'm looking for in contentment. And the main one is appreciating myself and my things and the everyday. And I have been more specific on that before. And so in a sense, we could say, if I appreciate my things, then I am content. Because I can say, if I appreciate my things, then I am content. But I can appreciate my things, but not actually feel contentment. So what does contentment feel like? And I know I'm kind of going around and around here, because I'm trying to get to the bottom of me personally. How will I know if I succeed? What does success in this project look like? And the numbers mean something, right? The number goals mean something, but they don't mean everything. And so ultimately what I'm trying to say here is, whatever project you're doing, ask yourself this question. That's number one, is just figure out the answer to this question. And for you, that answer might truly be so simple. I know I'm successful in my low buy year if I stick to my budget. That could genuinely be all that you're looking for. I'm just asking that we think about this question. But in terms of like me, I'm using the numbers as a way to achieve something else. For whatever reason in my mind, when I'm thinking about how will I know if I succeed, appreciating who I am is an abstract idea. How do I know that I'm appreciating who I am? How do I know that I'm appreciating my things? Because I can still use my things, and I can, let's say, have a makeup collection where I only buy replacements, and that's just like my lifestyle, right? That's not a low buy. It's my lifestyle now. That doesn't actually mean I'm content. You can do these things, but I'm not actually content. So what does contentment feel like? I think is a question I think I need to answer. And one of the reasons why I'm asking this question is because one of the things I want to think about is monthly reflections. So typically in the no buy, low buy year, or the last 2 years, I've done a monthly reflection. And that has kind of just been, what did I buy? What is happening in my life right now? What's affecting how I'm doing? I want to do better than that this year. One of the biggest differences between this year and the previous years, which is the reason why I'm approaching the low buy differently, is that when I was thinking about low buys and no buys, I was really thinking about consumption, right? I was really thinking about how I was spending. Whereas my goal this year is not focused on the things. And so this year, the question is, how can I be happy or content with who I am and what I have and where I'm at? when I was on the no buys or the low buys, for me, the metric of success at that time was, am I buying things or not? Or am I sticking to the budget or not? And that was the only metric of success, which wasn't exactly what I was looking for. Wasn't actually, I guess, the metric of success, or yeah, it wasn't the metric of success that I needed. What I want to do, what we're going to do now, is I want to build a template for reflection that I'll do offline in a large respect, but I'll share with you the kind of end result. And so what I want to create here is to really make sure that I have contentment on my mind, and I get to reflect on that at least once a month. So I guess the most basic question, which we need to address, right, is what did I bring in? And we'll format this after. So this will be the place where we look at the number of items I brought in, and that is where we'll look at the chart. So that part is thinking about like the stuff in and stuff out. That's number one. And like I said, the easiest thing to talk about. So instead of saying I brought in 10 things in these, like, let's say 2 categories or 5 categories, what I think would be interesting would be like, what % of my stuff budget have I used this month? And then how much is left is interesting. I think that to me, that's a little bit better than here are all the things that I bought. If all I did was that, my check-ins are just better for me reflection wise. I think number 2, or I guess related to number 1, would be the actual budget. So did I spend any of my budget this month? And by the time we get to the end of the month, I think that you'll know if I used budget or not, because the video will be out. That addresses the what I bought. I have a general thoughts that are already here because I'm always I'm having experiences and I'm reflecting and thinking about them as I go. I think the third question that will be important to ask would be, what contentment project did I complete? Or just, I think more about like the contentment project. Okay, so number 3 is going to be contentment projects. So what project did I complete this month? I do think that there's going to be projects that won't make it on the channel, but will happen. One of them I'm thinking about right now is like the men's game. I actually thought it would be filmed and, come on the channel. But I do think that only parts of it are going to make it onto the channel, maybe in a vlog or something. So it's entirely possible that contentment projects as a contentment project, you won't see all 12 is my feeling. And also there might be more than 12. There might be 20. A contentment project for me could be spending 1 week like watching no TV after, let's say, 8 or after dinner. That is an interesting one I would like to do. Okay, I say TV. I don't own a TV or any subscription services. So like what I would watch is somewhat limited, but what I'm saying still stands. So I might not actually film that, and it might just be an update on that in this kind of video. So if I did film it, like my makeup minimalist video, when it comes to the update, you won't see, like, the makeup minimalist update won't happen for January because it won't be done, just because of like the timing of things and the fact that I got sick. So the whole project was pushed like 10 days. So it's not going to come by the end of the month. There are other projects, like I think one that could be good for I talk about in January is the men's game. It was something that I started with intentionality at the beginning of the year that likely won't be finished in January. So how does all of that affect the project? And I think a related question is also, did this project provide the tool of contentment that I thought it would, or hope that it would? And then any updates since the video if I filmed it. I think what is relevant there is that, let's say I finished the men's game yesterday. And I'm like, yes, guys, I loved it. It was so much fun. I could see myself doing it again. And then I jump right into my regular makeup usage and like nothing changed. So the fact that I thought that it would be helpful for the future and I enjoyed it and I liked the experience is one thing, but like the aftermath of the project, did I stick with it? Do I want, like, what's the reality here matters as well. And so I think like other contentment updates just keeps the door open for contentment to kind of be at the core here. One of the things I wanted to think about was goals. Like, am I achieving my goals? And the first 3 are all part of those like numericals, spending the money that I want to spend and bringing in the number of things I want to bring in or not bring in. And then the contentment project also corresponds to how many of the 12 have I completed. One thing I'm wondering here is I wish that there was a metric for contentment itself. Like, can I give myself a rating? I am feeling this level of content this month. I'm just going to put that as a question mark. That feels extremely subjective. And then it's also like, how do you create a system for that? One of the reasons as well for my wanting to structure an update in some kind of more structured way is because I found myself last year, like when I was looking back on videos and rewatching videos, I wasn't actually talking about the goals. What I mean by that is I would talk about what I brought in, and I would also talk about, like, I think sometimes more than others, like how I felt about that product. And then I would also talk about like how I'm feeling. But the how I'm feeling was often just like a description of what happened in my life. And I don't think I did a very good job consistently talking about how did what happened in my life affect the way that I spent, or a reflection on the spending itself. I don't want to say that kind of discussion was missing, because let's be clear, it wasn't completely absent. And so I think, how do I feel about the number and types of things I brought in? I'm just putting this question here for now, just in the sense of I can organize later, because I think what I'm actually trying to get at, let's maybe move it to contentment projects. Because I think what I'm ultimately trying to get at with the contentment projects is to figure out in the best way that I can how I feel about the projects, because I'm doing them because I'm thinking that they're going to affect some kind of change. So how effective were they in my contentment level? And have they changed how content I am, or my view of contentment? And now I'm kind of wondering, like, do I give myself a baseline level of contentment? Like, I would give myself a contentment rating of, let's say, if 100 is my goal or the most content, I started the year at, let's say, a 20 or an 80. Because I would want to try and find some way to evaluate my success. That's what I'm trying to do here, is to find a way to evaluate my success. And how do I evaluate my success in contentment, which is what I was talking about at the top of the video. If I do the project, it doesn't actually mean that I'm content with my life. Even if I like the project, even if I'm buying less, doesn't actually make me content with my life. So how do I figure out if I'm successful or not? That, and then how do I change, and then how do I put that into a metric? Because in some ways, like, the metric itself, yes, it's subjective, but it's also kind of like, okay, here's another analogy. I'm on the minimalist Reddit group, and there's a lot of people who consistently ask, like, and so a lot of people ask things like, how does a minimalist pack for vacation? Or what does a minimalist vacation bag look like? And there's all kinds of questions like that. And I think people are getting so hung up on the title of minimalist that what they really want is somebody to say a minimalist packs one bag with 30 pieces of clothing, let's say, and 10 toiletries, or 30 pieces of clothing, shoes, accessories, fashion, and then 10 toiletries. That's a minimalist travel bag. I think that's what a lot of people are looking like, so then they can use that information or that rating or that system, that number, to then give themselves something to strive for. But in some ways, it's kind of like there's too attached to the label, they're missing the point. That like if you have 25 things instead of the 30, or if you have 40 things instead of the 30, that can still be minimalist. And so am I getting, and like I was just illustrating, am I getting too hung up on the label of contentment that like I'm missing the point? The last thing I want to say is that I have watched a number of videos in the last couple of weeks, people talking about their reflections on 2021, how they did on their low buy or their no buy. I was watching Rebecca Morgan's video in particular, which I loved, and Oriel. I was catching up on her depthier things, and I was hearing both of them talk about like how they spend and how they're conceptualizing their projects, or how they conceptualize their older projects, which is helpful. And one of the things I actually thought of from watching Rebecca Morgan's video, one of Rebecca Morgan's goals was to have her empties be similar or less than the number of makeup items that she brought in. Wait, hold on. She wanted her makeup items that she brought in be the similar, like let's say she finished 35 makeup items. The number of new makeup items she brought in were either 35 or less. And I like that because I think that's just like another way of being intentional. You might have seen that I kind of put it in here. I don't know if I want to like officially make that a goal because I do like that. However, I honestly think, so if I have this budget of $650 to include everything, including replacements like deodorant or soap, what have you, that like whatever that number is, like will be manageable because it's such a vast category of things where there's a lot of things that can be put into that amount. But it's like, can I consume less? And then also, am I becoming obsessed with consuming less things? Yes, it's a goal. I do want to consume less things, but am I getting sucked into consuming less for the sake of consuming less, opposed to consuming less because it meets my goals? The other thing that one of you mentioned, which feels, I don't know, it's like, why didn't you think about this sooner? It seems so obvious, is that one of you, I think it was Pia, was talking about your goal is to only like bring in and own the number of things that you can actually finish. To me, that's that's a much simpler goal than like makeup inventory number goals, as in like I want to own 3 eyeliners or I want to own 10 eyeshadow palettes. And I love and am drawn to this goal of only bringing in the number of things you can finish. So for me, I have something like 8 complexion products, like 8 foundations, which I believe I could genuinely finish in 2 years. So that would be like an okay category. And lipsticks, or lip glosses, I think I have around 8, something like that. That is also, like I finished like 7 lip glosses this year. I can finish all the lip glosses I have in a timely manner. Instead of putting usage goals, I want this many things, I think a better question is, can I finish what I have in the next, or within the item's expiry, and will I? That is a much better question. And so if I ask myself that of my collection, I am at the moment less interested in bringing stuff in, but there's always moments of like, wow, there's this thing that I really want and love. I mean, we'll have to see when we get there. But I'm thinking of like, maybe that's the goal for my makeup. I don't know. So that's where I'm at in terms of my spending. I'm going to maybe put that as a question. I'm going to put that as a question in here. My camera's about to die. So I'm going to put this as a question in here. What's my final verdict on that? This is, I think, a good start for the reflection. Let me know your thoughts. Are there any questions you would want to see me reflect on in the video, or any topics that you would want to see me reflect on every month? I would love to know that so I can bring you that information. I think that's enough for now. I feel like I've created a reflection that is, like I said, a good start, but also I'm starting to think about what my success will look like and how I can measure that. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again around here soon. Bye.